Hello, I'm the Pink Phantom. Welcome to my podcast, where we will go deep into the lair of the purple worm instead of down into the rabbit hole, where we'll voyage into the astral realm of my mind and explore the verse of nerd culture. This is Phantom Thoughts. In this episode, I have some call-ins about the first level AD&D party versus the huge ancient red dragon in the last episode, and then I have some commentary on how I tried to set up the party and how I think the process of playing out the scenario went, what I could improve upon, what I think I did okay, how much of role luck played in it, and that's going to be the episode.
Hey, Pink Phantom. Daniel from Bandits. Keep calling in. Just listened to your Into the Dragon episode. That was pretty awesome. Yeah, it's funny. I know that you said you optimized the heck out of that group, but you also fought the toughest possible dragon. So I think the proof of concept was definitely there, and it was really fun to listen to it. So thanks for doing that. It made me think, oh man, I should do the same thing in original Dungeons and Dragons, because that's kind of, I've done it at cons like that, but it'd be fun to kind of play it out so people who haven't been to the con could see how I do it. It's really fun, and just to see that it's such a challenge, right? And of course, you got to be willing and ready to know that some of those pieces are going to go down, but not as many as I thought would have. So well played, well played.
That is Daniel Norton of the Bandits Keep podcast YouTube channel, and he also has a blog. I'll put links to those in the show notes. Thank you so much for calling in, Daniel. Yeah, it was a really fun thought experiment type scenario. I mean, dragons are cool. That's why it's in the name of the game, right? And dragons are something you want to see at some point if you're going to be adventuring in a fantasy RPG, probably. And just putting it all together, it was a lot of fun digging back into the AD&D rules and putting together a party and putting together characters and coming up with strategy. That's a fun part of the old school style of play. And that would be interesting to hear your take on an OD&D fight between a party and a dragon. That would be exciting. But thank you for calling in, and appreciate all your appreciation.
Hey, Jason here. Just listened to Enter the Dragon episode, I think 39. Great episode. I was smiling the entire time. I think maybe you played a little fast and loose with a couple of the rules, but that said, yeah, I thought that was amazing. Thank you so much for doing that. I really appreciated it. And I look forward to your next episode where you go into the builds, and I'm sure I'm in the car driving, but I'm sure you probably use the character creation out of Unearthed Arcana. And anyway, but I'm interested to see all your comments on it after the fact. So, but I just wanted to give you kudos. Great job. Really, really enjoyed it. And yeah, so I will talk to you later.
Thanks for calling in, Jason. That's Jason of the Nerds RPG Variety Cast. Links to his podcast will be in the show notes. Yeah, I did play fairly fast and loose, I think, in terms of character creation. I was trying to create an optimal party. I hope it was still a realistic party within the AD&D rules. I tried to play out the scenario pretty much rules as written, but as you'll hear in sort of the more analytical portion of the podcast, I made some mistakes, but I think I did pretty well. And I think, it was a for the game engine, it was a possible outcome. It took some luck. It took, like I said, some optimized characters, but overall, I was pretty pleased with the way things came out. And yeah, it's always interesting. Thank you for calling in. All right, so talking about again, first level party AD&D versus a huge ancient dragon, and this is sort of a breakdown of how I created the characters and my mindset there, and kind of just how I did in terms of excuse me, execution and such, and just what some of the factors were, how things could have been different. I'm going to do the character part first, and if you're not interested in a lot of analysis, then you can end the podcast there. And if you haven't listened to my last podcast, episode 39, Enter the Dragon, you should probably listen to that first before you listen to this.
although the creation of the characters, it won't make a difference. But if the analysis won't make as much sense to you. All right, so what I wanted to do was I understood that, we all have the concept in our minds, right? The big bad version of the red dragon, the toughest version of the red dragon against a first level party should be a, it's a tremendous task, if not an impossible task. So I wanted to give them the best possible opportunity to win, to get the victory and to at least have a chance. And so, I made the decision to use Unearthed Arcana because Unearthed Arcana has method 5 for character generation, where you essentially pick the class first, and it tells you how many 6-sided dice you roll for each ability score, so that you're more likely, especially for those classes that have more stringent requirements of a minimum ability score, to get that. And then it also has the instruction that if you're trying to get this class and you still, after rolling the dice, you don't get the minimum ability score, just give them the minimum ability score. And so, depending on the class and the ability score, it will range anywhere from 3d6 all the way up to 9d6. And most of the characters, for their main ability scores, like strength, if you were a fighter or something like that, they'd be rolling 7, 8, 9 dice. So I wanted to do that, and then I read familiarize myself with the rule, and it turns out that method can only be used with humans by the rules. And I didn't want to, immediately, okay, well, we'll just do it with demi-humans too, because one of the things I wanted to do was to have multi-class characters, because that would give them more resources, more opportunities. If you have a half-elven or elven fighter, cleric, magic user, then they've got 2 spells at their disposal at least, and things of that nature. And so they would have more opportunities, more abilities, the ability to use better armor and things. And so, okay, well, how are we going to do this? So I decided I would do some human characters to get to use these larger numbers of dice to give them potential for much higher scores and good bonuses and such, and that they would be dual classed. Now, the rules for dual class say that you can start in one class, and then you stop progressing in that class, and you start progressing in another class, with the caveat that you have to use only the abilities of that second class until you get above the level you achieved in the first class. And the end result of that was, if you use the abilities of the first class, then you wouldn't get any experience for that adventure. So that was, in a campaign, then that's kind of an incentive. In this kind of a one shot, it doesn't matter. You're going to be able to mix and match. Although there are some limits, like you can't, if you're a fighter magic user, you can't wear heavy armor and cast magic user spells. Those kind of restrictions still apply. But it gives you more opportunities, and it's dual class is basically to give humans a way to kind of multi-class, but it's not quite the same. The advantage being, and this is a little deep in the weeds, it doesn't really apply to any of the scenario, but just for those who don't know, demi-humans generally in most classes are limited to certain levels in those classes. So, giving them the ability to multi-class and use them all at the same time and kind of progress more or less the same is kind of a balance for that fact that they're gonna reach those ceilings, and so it doesn't matter quite as much, because they'll be a little stronger than the human character at the beginning, but the human characters will eventually outpace them because humans can reach unlimited levels in any class. Now, with dual class, you would go up a few levels and then decide, okay, I want to start with the other class and start working your way up. But that second class, you could be unlimited levels. So these were going to be dual class, but it was all going to be first level. They're going to be first level dual class. And that's a little, on the gaming side, working the rules in kind of from a player perspective, that's a little meta gaming. That's something we talked about before. But, in this situation, I think it kind of applied pretty well. So I said, we're going to do that for some characters, but we do need to do some demi-human characters so that we can have some characters that can, cast a magic user spell and still be wearing armor, because demi-humans have that advantage. So for the demi-humans, I decided to use method 3 for to roll the ability scores. So method 3 is, for each ability score, you roll 3d6 6 times, and you take the highest result of those 6. So you go roll by roll. So I thought that would probably be the best way to generate a score. I could have done, there were other things. Method 1 is, the 4d6, take out the lowest, and then arrange in order. Maybe that would have ended better, but I thought 3d6 you'd get a good chance to get the best opportunities. So I used method 5 for the dual class characters, basically matching the best ability with each class. So like I had a fighter magic user, cudgel, and so for fighter I made sure I used the fighter number of dice for the strength and the magic user number of dice for the intelligence, things like that. So I rolled them up and got some good results, in terms of what I was looking for with the characters. I mentioned during the last podcast that the character that ended up being Sir Gus, the cleric paladin, he beat all the odds. He rolled the 18 for strength for the paladin, and then being a paladin, he rolled the percentile roll, and it came up double zero, single zero, the 100, the best strength you could have. The only way to get a +6 bonus to damage, just it worked out that way. And so and there were some good rolls, and the ability scores overall were very good. There were only, in the 6 main party members, the class party members, there was only one score that was not double digits, and there were not too many scores that were there were 2 scores that were under double digits, and there weren't. In fact, one of those was Cudgel. He ended up with a 6 in wisdom. He actually rolled a 5, but he needed a 6 to make his class, so he got a 6. And but most of the scores were 15 or higher. I mean, there were a couple 13s, 12, 11, 14, but 15 is kind of the breaking point where you get bonuses, and particularly in strength. Everybody had a damage bonus in strength, although using bows, they didn't get much use out of it, most of them. And 3 of the characters had at least a +1 to hit, which you have to have a 17 to get that +1 to hit. So, and again, using bows, that didn't really translate, but there were some good dexterity bonuses. There were some pretty good constitution bonuses, which helps out a lot with hit points. 4 of the characters got some kind of bonus hit points, anywhere from 1 to 4. So they got some good rolls, and that gave them a little boost. Hit point wise, they were all 9 or 10 hit points, and if you're used to WotC D&D, that may not sound like quite much. That may sound like more like an average, because characters get a lot of hit points. I think they get max hit points. I know that in 5th edition they just give you max hit points at first level, but these guys, they had to roll their hit points, so they got some good rolls on those as well. Plus the bonus, but they only rolled hit points with the dual class characters. You only roll hit points for the first class, because you don't start rolling hit points for the second class until you get above that first class's level. So whatever your first class was. In the case of Sir Gus, just the way character concept I had for him was cleric first, then paladin, and that really he could potentially have gotten more hit points with a paladin, but he rolled high for a cleric because his bonus was only +1, so he rolled right at the top for a cleric, and the others rolled pretty well as well. And some of it, because they had fighter in their mix, they were averaging pretty well for the demi-humans who were multi-class. That helped drag up the average. So I wanted to do multi-class. I wanted to do dual class. I wanted to do method 5. I wanted to get good ability scores. So, mission accomplished on that. Got everything I could have wanted, other than just giving them 18s across the board. I don't know how I could have done much better. And then in terms of, buying their equipment, tried to buy good equipment. I couldn't get Cudgel any armor because I wanted him to cast a magic user spell. Turned out I probably could have given him armor. Actually, the armor didn't even come to play because the dragon never had to use his melee attacks. He used all area effect attacks, 3 breath weapons, and a fireball. So, the armor classes sort of were irrelevant. But I kitted them out, and I wanted to get them some mercenaries. I wanted them to have some mercenaries accompany them. It's part of the game in AD&D is to have, supporting people, whether it's torchbearers or valets or, things that make the character's life easier, and some hired men at arms to help them delve dungeons and things. And really, I was inspired by, there's a podcast called the Basculus Hills Breakdown. It's based on a blog of the same name that's at thirdkingdomgames.com. I urge everyone to check it out. They're running an old school style game there that they started at a high level because they wanted to concentrate on domain play. So they're doing a lot with men at arms and stuff. And in one of the podcasts, they had an adventure where they were hunting down a manticore, and they got the manticore to land. And when he landed, everybody in the party, including some archers that had their men at arms, cut loose with arrows. And even though Manticore is pretty tough, and the characters, actually, their 2 hit rolls weren't very good, but they had so many archers with them that just the sheer number of D20s being rolled, they got enough hits to just kill the Manticore outright. So I wanted to give them I knew that they were only going to be hitting on 20s, and then any bonuses they had to get them those 20s, but they were going to be rolling on 20s. So if you could get a lot of people, just get a lot of rolls. Sheer number of dice rolls, let the law of averages give you get some hits in. And so I kind of plotted out, and I kind of got involved in my head a little bit at this point of actually creating a party that would be adventuring. So they only ended up with 2 mercenaries. They ended up one good thing about Unearthed Arcana and going with a paladin was a cavalier usually gets a horse and good armor, so he has more money to spend. So I was counting on that to help hire mercenaries. But I said, well, if the party is traveling and one's on a horse, they're probably all going to need horses. So I ended up getting all them horses and said, okay, if we get mercenaries, we're going to have to get them horses. So we only ended up with 2 mercenaries, and they had a wagon and some valets, just like, they because I want them to be an adventuring party. It's just that I want them to be optimized because, it's kind of like this adventure is sort of on rails. You're going to encounter a dragon, and I want you to have an opportunity to maybe defeat the dragon. And so the last thing I wanted to do, after using methods that gave them good bonuses and dual classing and multi-classing to give them a lot of resources and hiring some mercenaries to give them some extra shots, was I wanted them to maybe get some magic items. Maybe not. So I said, what I'll do is I'll go to the AD&D Dungeons Master's Manual and go to, I think it's Appendix A, where they have the random dungeon generation, and that includes generating encounters and generating treasure. And so I went through and I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll, and as soon as they dig up enough experience that the person that could most easily level is just below 2nd level, that's when I'll stop. And that turned out that person, there was one character that I didn't dual class. I looked at dual classing him. I didn't think he was going to get anything extra from it, so I just made him a fighter, the halfling. I made him a fighter so I could throw some good armor on him if I could afford it, and have another tough armor class guy, because again, I was expecting more melee than I ended up with. So we go into the dungeon. I roll up some rooms. I roll up what's in the rooms. Is it traps? Is it this? Is it that? What's the treasure? What do they encounter? They end up encountering an evil party of a fighter, a cleric, a magic user, and a thief, and a bunch of goblins. And the treasure that they were guarding, and the treasure that was generated from them, because the way the DMG works is it will have some treasure for them to guard. It says, is it monsters? Is it treasure? Is it monsters and treasure? And they rolled up monsters and treasure. And then, but you also, it gave you to, if you have this kind of monster, then roll this treasure in addition, just what they have on them. And so because they encountered a party, which wasn't a high percentage, but it was terribly narrow percentage, but it was a high percentage. They got some pretty good magic items. Some of them weren't useful. One of them was a net of snaring, which is only useful underwater. But they got the potion of invisibility, which Bernie used to good effect. They got some magical armor, a couple things of magical armor, and the magic arrows. So, and that was a real boost. Getting those, I was like, yes, that's exactly what I was hoping to run into. But it was all randomly generated, and they could have ended up with a bunch of nothing. But they ended up with some useful items, and then I ruled, okay, when they got through this second room, one of the valets came in and said, hey, we spotted where the dragon went that we've been looking for. And so off they went, and they took enough time to recover. And because they had 2 clerics in the party, they had healing available, so it wouldn't be a matter of, they'd have to wait days to regenerate any hit points they lost in the dungeon. Although, and that is one thing I did hand wave. That's one thing I didn't do by the book. I didn't actually run the encounters because this is the party I was put together to go to the dragon. So I just assumed they won, and maybe they got a little beat up, and the monsters they were facing were not overwhelming. I mean, it was a party of 6 plus 2 mercenaries against a party of 4, and they were all single classed, and then, a handful of goblins. So I didn't run those battles. I just hand waved it. Said, okay, they beat them and they took their stuff and they recovered any treasure and they got their magic items, and then they healed up and they took off. So that was how I generated the characters. And I've been going on for almost 20 minutes about that. Probably shouldn't have taken that long. But so to summarize, I wanted to use method 5. Could only use it for humans. So I dual classed the humans. I was going to multi-class the demi-humans anyway, most of them. Use method 3 for them. Use the cavalier class to get the horse and the good armor. The other thing I wanted to use, make sure to use Unearthed Arcana for was weapon specialization, because you can get those bonuses by spending proficiencies and getting good bonuses to hit and some damage bonuses. So I wanted that. That was another reason for using Unearthed Arcana. And then including the mercenaries and running them more or less through a random adventure to see if I could get them some good items to use. And that's it for party generation. So if that's what you came for, you're done. But if you'd like to continue, I'm going to talk about how did I run. The idea was, number one, was it pretty optimal play? Did I do wrong by the dragon? Did I make bad decisions for the dragon? Did I make bad decisions for the party? And also execution, just how well did I execute a system that I have not played in a while? So in terms of optimal play, the dragon, there really were not that many decision points. I mean, the main ones were one I rolled for. When Bernie attacked him in his lair when he was sleeping, would he breathe fire at Bernie in the lair or go outside and try to catch him outside the cave and breathe fire on him there? So that was one decision point. I used the dice for that. And then the other decision point was when he flew up in the air, which weapon was he going to use? By that point, he was down to 1 breath weapon and he had his fireball spell. And what was he going to use it and who was he going to aim at? And that was really it. And I thought I made pretty good decisions in terms of what I was doing. The first shot went at Bernie because that was really all who he was aware of. He was focused on him. You could make I guess maybe I could have made some kind of roll to see if he noticed the party hiding. But I don't, I think you're stabbed by this invisible guy and you fly out trying to catch him and you're focused. And I'm a pretty single-minded guy, so I guess I approached the dragon the same way as a single-minded entity. And they were hiding. I mean, I thought the party had a good plan. I'll get to that in a minute. So he could have made, the big decision point, I think, where I could have gone wrong was when he got up in the air, the next round he cast Fireball. But at that point, I think he still had 20-something hit points left. And so his Fire Breath would be more effective. A dragon would understand, the weaker I get, the weaker my fire. So should he have used Fire Breath instead and then spent Fireball? Now, with the Fire Breath, he wouldn't be able to get Bernie in the cone because Bernie had been behind him. And the other two melee guys were in front of him. And I felt for sure he would aim for the melee guys because they were the guys that had been wailing on him to that point. And, then he would have had the Fireball for the archers. And he used the Fire Breath on two of the people that were shooting bows at him. And he only could get two of them in that cone. The Fireball might have been able to get three. So, and it probably would have killed all three of them, or at least knocked them unconscious. And, how much of a difference would that have made? But in terms of how the dice rolls actually went, it really wouldn't have made much of a difference. Because if he went the way he did and then attacked the melee fighters as soon as he got up in the sky and then attacked the ranged people as on the next round, all those folks had done all the damage they were going to do by the time that Fireball landed. So in terms of hit points, it wouldn't have made a difference. Now, if he had gone up in the sky and gone for the ranged people first, because dragons are smart. I think red dragons are considered exceptional intelligence in AD&D. So maybe he says, okay, I'm away from the guys that have been hitting me with melee. Let me attack these ranged guys first. So in that situation, he would have saved himself, what was that number? He would have saved himself about 9 hit points. Because the Fireball would have went off and the people who I take that back. It would have been 8 hit points. Because the people who inflicted that damage would be down a round earlier than when they inflicted those 2 hits. So that would have made some difference, certainly. Now, at the end, the dragon was down to 1 hit point, and the die roll that knocked it out, killed it, was a 6 for damage. So even with 8 more hit points, it would have been down to 3. And there still would have been 2 archers left and Sir Gus, and he was out of ranged weapons by then, and he would have had to attack them hand to hand. And Sir Gus had a -1 armor class because Sir Gus ended up being sort of the highest level of Cavalier, and so had a full set of full plate armor and shield. So, and Sir Gus has a +6 damage from his strength. So, 1 lick from Sir Gus would finish the dragon off if he's only got 5 hit points. So it might have devolved down to a 50-50 situation. There would have been 1 more die roll for range attacks before the dragon got an attack in. And the 2 mercenaries, they still hadn't had to make a fear reaction yet. They would have had to because the dragon was probably coming after them next. And so that might have driven them out, and then the next round might have been land and take on Sir Gus, and whoever gets initiative has a chance to finish the other guy off. So it probably would have been more 50-50. So I don't know that, psychologically, I think, because that's the way I was thinking. I was thinking psychologically, not intellectually. The dragon was, as soon as he took off, he was going to try to take out the guys who had done him so much harm. And so you can make the argument either way. If you go from psychology, the dragon did it in the correct order. If you go by intellect, the dragon probably should have switched up and gone after the people who were proven ranged threats. And the dragon would have been right to do so because, Sven could have pulled out a bow and took a shot, but like I said, because of the nature of the Cavaliers, they don't start getting proficiency in things other than a fairly wide array of weapons until later. So I didn't even give a bow to Sir Gus. That was an oversight on my part. You could say that was an optimal play oversight. So I think I played the dragon pretty optimally. Even if I had played him more optimally, it still would have been up in the air. Would the party win or would the dragon win? Now, as far as the party is concerned, I thought it was a good plan. Lure the dragon out. When he lands, try to entangle him, and then try to blind him, and then start pelting with arrows and get the heavy hitters in close and try to take him out as quickly as possible. And overall, that part was pretty good. I think the mistake I really made in terms of optimal play for the party was, and some of this, again, goes into the realm of metagaming, things I know about the game system in situation that the characters wouldn't know. But the characters might, you can make a reason for the characters to change. Instead of having Cudgel cast light to try to blind the dragon to make his hits more difficult, and having Katya use her psionic blast, have the most shoot magic missile. Katya actually did have magic missile as her lone magic user spell as a fighter cleric magic user. She just froze in fear before she had the chance to use it. And Cudgel, he could have had magic missile, but I had him do light instead. But light and sonic blast were saving throw based attacks, and the dragon had really, really good saving throws. So from a metagaming standpoint, absolutely that was not optimal. From a planning standpoint, a party making a plan, you could see it making sense. So was it optimal? Was it not optimal? I'm not sure. I think you could go either way. Whereas with the dragon, I lean toward. I think I did play it pretty optimally. On this aspect of the party, I think I lean towards I didn't. I probably should have gone with magic missile, and that would have tossed up potentially 10 points of damage. And Katya really should have used. Actually, with Katya, I definitely went optimal because she should have used magic missile instead of her bow in the first round. So that was potentially 2 to 5 points of damage. And if Cudgel had thrown one in there, that was 2 to 5 points of damage. And that would have killed the dragon. Well, if they both hit for 5 points of damage, that 10 points would have killed the dragon. Well, no, it wouldn't have made a difference. It wouldn't have made a difference. It would have killed the dragon a little earlier, but the people who were already down would have been down. So the unconscious players would have been unconscious. Player characters would have been unconscious, and the dead player characters would be dead. So that alone wouldn't have made a result. Fairy Fire, I meant to fire off Fairy Fire around earlier. Edgar was going to do Entangle and then Fairy Fire, but I got the idea in my head to get the 3 people with specialization in the bow up close so they could use the point blank range, get an extra plus to hit, +2 instead of +1, and potentially an extra damage. So, that was a case of me juggling a lot. Really, the mistakes I made were me juggling a lot. I'll get to that in a minute. But the too many buts and uhs there. Generally, I think, and at Fairy Fire, it wouldn't have made much of a difference. Looking back at the attack rolls, doing it one round earlier, I think I figured out it would make 1 hit more. So again, if you add in all the magic missile potential damage and maximum damage for an additional hit, you're still not killing the dragon before he gets off all 3 of his breath weapons and his fireball. So there's that. No, I take it back. That would stop him from getting that last breath weapon off because I think he went second in that turn. So it would have helped knock him down from that. Would it? Let's look at my notes here. No. Oh, actually not. Okay. He still would have gotten his breath weapon off. But the other thing that could play into that was the first round. I didn't. Well, this falls more in execution. So let's go. So in terms of optimizing the party's opportunity, I think I didn't quite optimize it, but I don't think it would have made as much. I don't think it would have made a difference. With the dragon, I think I did optimize it, but even if I had changed, I don't think it would have made a difference. Well, it would have made it a 50-50 ending instead of the dragon was killed. So yes, that would actually make a difference. But I think I did the right thing. So I think I did the right thing, but doing something different would have been better for the dragon, if that makes any sense. In terms of execution, the big problem was I was just not juggling the bonuses well. I'd made some notes on bonuses, but it wasn't everything I needed, and the way the situation evolved, I kind of lost track of some things. You can still hear it. I edited a lot to try to go back and put in the proper bonuses and everything, but there's still places where I got it wrong. The last one on the round 5 attacks, I got the damage for 2 of the attacks wrong, but by exactly the same amount, both for and against the party. So I had one attack that should have done 1 more damage, and I had one attack that shouldn't have hit that only did 1 point of damage. So no changes there. But in the first round, when the bowman fired, I only had Harl and Quinn fire once each, and they should have fired 2 with their longbows. So if you had done more optimal party play by launching magic missiles, and if Harl and Quinn had managed to get an extra hit in, and you had done fairy fire turn earlier and gotten a miss to become a hit, you probably would have ended up with you potentially could have ended up with enough damage that Katya and Cudgel wouldn't have been laying on the ground bleeding because the dragon would have been killed before he got his last breath weapon off. But again, they still were going to survive the battle either way. It's just they'd be unconscious and they'd have to have their wounds bounded and recover. So there wasn't a lot of mistake. If you add up all my mistakes, if I did anything differently, it would have been maybe reordering what the dragon did. And in that circumstance, the dragon still has a chance to win. But overall, it still went very well for the party. And I'm going to, let's see, where's those notes? Grab some notes. Let's take a look at what role luck played. So luck, what role did luck play? I went through. I've actually been through the podcast several times. First editing it, and then just going through trying to get hard data. I like analysis. Okay, this. I'm really nerding out now. So if you don't want to deal with the numbers, tap out now. But I looked through the hit rolls and the damage rolls to see how things went. How did luck go? Because I know I said several times the party was rolling hot. The party was rolling hot. And in one aspect they were, in one aspect they actually weren't. So in terms of damage, it's interesting, with all the different damages that different weapons do in D&D, all different versions of D&D, the party only rolled 1 die for damage that wasn't a D6. Bernie rolled a D10 for his longsword on the surprise attack at the very beginning of all this. And then everything else after that was a D6 because Sir Gus's lance was a 3d6 weapon, 3 to 18 points of damage. So in terms of damage, the dragon actually didn't roll for damage except for Fireball. The only thing he rolled for damage was Fireball, and those were D6s as well. And they were the same D6s. And, the dragon didn't roll any to hit rolls, but he did roll a D20 for saving throws. So let's compare what they did do the same, and then we'll look at the hit rolls from the party. All right, so saving throws, rolling a D20, the expected average on a D20 is 10.5. That's the way it averages out. If you average out your rolls and get 10.5, you've rolled average for a D20. The Dragon, for his 3 2-hit rolls, where he only needed 4 or 6 to succeed, he rolled a 15.3. So pretty high above average. The party, for their 2-hit roll, for their saving throws, either versus fear effect or to try to save versus fireball or breath weapon, they rolled 16.1. In fact, if you look at the parties where the party's saving throws line up on some of these different saves, they were never even 50% to succeed on any of the rolls, even the folks that had some pretty good bonuses, because their saving throws were so high. But they rolled 16.1, and half the time they saved. So both of them did better expected than saving throws. In terms of damage, the only time initiative, in terms of initiative and surprise, the Dragon on initiative and surprise rolls on a D6, where 3.5 is the expected average, he rolled a 3.6. And the party on initiative and surprise rolls rolled a 4.7. So it's is that a 7? That is, no, that is a 9. 9.75. 4.975. So almost 5. So party rolled, that's not right. 4.375. I corrected my number, and so I couldn't read it. So the party rolled 4.375. The Dragon rolled 3.6. So the Dragon rolled a little higher than average, and the party rolled about half a point above average. Well, 0.8. 0.8 above average. But surprisingly, if you look at it, the party, let's see, the Dragon won initiative once, twice. So, yeah, okay. Well, that sounds about right then. The Dragon didn't roll a surprise when the party did, and then the Dragon won initiative 2 out of 6 times. So if you look at those averages, that seems about luck was on the party side in terms of rolling initiative. In terms of rolling damage, the fireball was 11d6, 30 points of damage on 11d6. It should have been a lot higher than that. It was a 2.7 roll. So the Dragon rolled almost a full point lower than average. The party's damage overall on d6s was 3.2. So they were actually a third of a point lower, but they were still higher than the Dragon. So the party was less unlucky, I guess, on d6s. They were a little unlucky, and the Dragon was more unlucky. Of course, the 1d12, Bernie hit the 12. I mean, he hit it dead on. So from that perspective, if you look at if the Dragon rolls higher, if the party rolls averages, then the party probably rolls a little less damage overall, because the damage would come down from the 12, but it would go up on some of the d6s, and the Dragon's fireball would go up on the d6s. But again, the fireball did kill 2 people. And even if the Dragon had hit average on the fireball, which would have been 38.5, so maybe 39 points, Sir Gus saved, and his armor was going to absorb pretty much all that damage. The horse would have died. That would have been the difference. The warhorse would have died. The warhorse never attacked again. I mean, Sir Gus never attacked again, for that matter. So, if the party's damage is a few points lower, again, they had that 5 extra points of damage that last arrow did that took out the Dragon. So it probably ends the same if the damage rolls just are average for everyone. So the final thing is to hit rolls, which the Dragon didn't do any of that because he was using those area weapons. The party's D20s, they average, again, for D20, 10.5 is the average. They hit 11.6, so a full point over. And that, to me, is the difference in the game. Optimal play for the dragon might give the dragon a 50-50 chance to win. More optimal play by the party would end up mostly the same result. Damage adjustment, if everybody averages out their damage, then it probably ends up the same. Saving throws, if the party actually averages out their saving throws, then the party probably loses that way because more people would have lost out to the fear, and so you'd have less attacks on the board. So the dragon would probably sweep whatever was left on the field. And two hit rolls, they would have had, I calculated, I think 24 points less damage in missed hits if you just dropped every 2 hit roll by 1 to get the average down to what the average for D20 is. So if the party roll was less lucky with their D20s, they would have lost. If they were less lucky with their saving throws, they would have lost. But they still would have done pretty well. I mean, they still would have, 24 points less on a dragon, and they did a few points more. It would have ended up being, the dragon would have had probably 20 points left, something in that neighborhood, just above 20 hit points left, and the battle would have continued if the hit rolls were what was different. And there was still some hits still to come, but at that point, you could be pretty confident that the dragon would finish off the other 2 bowmen and then land and still have plenty of hit points, that even if Sir Gus got a good lick in, like he'd been swinging with his longsword by that point, probably. And if nothing else changed, he's still been on his warhorse. He'd had 3 to 18 plus 6. So potentially he could still take that out in one shot, but it would be less likely. So optimal play for the dragon, I'll give myself a B. I'll give myself a B for optimal play for the dragon. Optimal play for the party, I think it was a good plan overall. I'm going to give myself a C plus for that. And, in terms of execution of the system, I think probably a C. I mean, I made mistakes, but I caught a lot of them. And most of them, it turns out, actually balanced out, where I made a mistake here. This shouldn't have been a hit. This should have been a hit. This should have been less points of damage. This should have been more points of damage. So it balanced out pretty well. So I'll give myself a C on that. In terms of, did I do it right? Optimizing the party for the dragon, you could consider that not right. I think the entangle spell, I don't know if I adjudicated that. The wording to me was ambiguous, because the entangle spell says, by means of this spell, the druid is able to cause plants in the area of effect to entangle creatures within the area. The grasses, weeds, bushes, and even trees warp, twist, and entwine about creatures, thus holding them fast for the duration of the spell. If any creature in the area of effect makes its saving throw, the effect of the spell is to slow its movement by 50% for the spell duration. And I ruled it basically grabbed the dragon to start with, but since he made his saving throw, he was able to move around and then eventually fly and take off. But reading that, it's a 4-inch diameter spell, so it would not just have been the dragon. It would have been mostly around the dragon, because the dragon is 48 feet long. But well, now that I read it that way, I think I did it well. I was thinking for some reason, no, yes, because area of effect does not change outdoors to indoors, so it would have been 40 feet. So it would have just been grabbing the dragon. I was thinking that was big enough that maybe the characters who came riding in should have been grabbed, but it doesn't, because it doesn't read that way. That something comes in, it just seems to read that whatever is in the area of effect when it's cast is grabbed. But since it's only 40 feet, then yeah, that it would have just affected the dragon. So, wow, okay, I'm glad I read that. I feel better about my interpretation on that spell. That's the other thing I didn't mention before.
using UA just by luck, going through the spells, saying, is there any new spells that would work? That not resist heat, endure heat spell was insane. It was absolutely insane. And that was the other optimization with the party. Not just magic missile, but the endure heat spell, because each of the clerics had a cure wound spell, and I tried to spread out the healing, and I'm not sure why I did that, because the dragon was pretty much going one hit anybody it hit. So healing would kind of be irrelevant, except for maybe to bring somebody up. But in first edition AD&D, if a character goes to 0 hit points or below, it's not like the WotC versions where you cast some healing on them and they're back up and in the fight. No, they're considered in a coma. They're in a coma for a while until they recover a hit point. So, I mean, even if they recover hit points, they're in a coma, and they're, even if they're revived completely, they can't do anything. They can't cast spells. They can't fight. They just have to rest for a day. So it wouldn't have. So even if characters down, so healing was really irrelevant. I should have used I should have used those 2 spell slots I used for cure spells for endure heat, and cast them on other characters. Now again, I don't think that ended up mattering, because I probably would have cast it on Katya, because she's the magic user in the psionic, so she had a few more weapons to come at the dragon with, and I don't know if I would have done Cudgel or Edgar. So Katya would have been kept upright anyway if she had that spell on her, but she was paralyzed in fear. So again, it wouldn't have made a difference. And if I put it on Edgar, Cudgel would have still gone down. If I put it on Cudgel, then he might have gotten. Well, no, he got a shot. He got his shots off in the round before the dragon fired his breath at him. So, yeah, he wouldn't have. He wouldn't. No, he would have gotten one more shot off. So the dragon might have died before rolling initiative for round 6, but it wouldn't have made a difference. But in terms of purely optimization, yeah, they probably should have been endure heats all the way around, because that spell is crazy. I mean, later on I went back and read the 2nd level cleric spell, resist fire, and the resist fire spell is not as good as endure heat, because resist fire, all it does is it reduces damage from magical fire by 50%. And then if you make a saving throw, it goes down to a quarter. But endure heat, the first hit is basically free, no matter how much magical fire it is. Now, I guess resist fire, over time, you could take more hits and it'd be 50%, 50%, 50%. But and endure heat is measured. The duration is measured in turns, which in AD&D is 10-minute segments. So that's crazy too, because it's intended to be used. The endure cold, endure heat is intended to be used, I guess, like if they're going to be fighting to quest up a volcano or something, or they're going to the plane of fire, and so they need to be protected from high temperatures for longer periods of time. But yeah, I think a C on execution, a C plus on party optimal play, a B on dragon optimal play, and the luck was with the party. But still, it was fun. And this has gone on way too long for this kind of podcast, just talking about analysis. But it was fun, and I enjoyed going through the numbers and stuff afterwards, and listening to it, and listening to how the battle went, and seeing what went right and what went wrong. And it could have gone the other way. It easily could have gone the other way. If I ran it again, it 100% could go the other way. And I think overall, what the numbers show, that the party rolled higher in terms of damage, rolled higher than average in terms of hitting, even an optimized first level party that is set up with extra resources, with all the resources a party could have against Ancient Red Dragon, is fairly long odds. They hit it.
The dice rolled. The dice had their say, and on this occasion they hit it. If you ran it 10 more times, they maybe win 3 total, maybe 4, but it wouldn't be 50-50. The dragon, unless the odds just stayed with the party all the time, the dragon would win more than it lost, maybe 2 to 1. So that's it. That's the podcast. But that was fun, and I kind of like these characters. I may have to do something else with them. It's kind of neat. It brings some interesting questions on how did all this get set up besides just a party chasing a dragon. What events led to this? What events will proceed from this? I mean, a first level party knocking out a dragon, people are going to think, oh, what happened to the dragon's horde? So the party could have company. I'm going to stop now. Thank y'all for listening, if you made it this far. And that's going to do it for another episode of Phantom Thoughts. If you have any feedback you'd like to leave, you can contact me by leaving a voice message at anchor.fm/the-pink-phantom, or you can send an email to thepinkphantom1@gmail.com, or you can contact me on Twitter @thepinkphantom. The music in this episode was Strength of the Titans and Late Night Radio by Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license from creativecommons.org/licenses/by/4.0.